Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about some Stranger Things. We also got some news stories to go over, a few things to talk about that are coming up on the horizon. But we're mostly going to be talking about part 2 of Stranger Things 4. Let's get started with On Beat. On Beat is, of course, our news segment, and we're going to kick things off with the news of a remake of Lollipop Chainsaw being in development, but Suda51 and James Gunn are not involved. They're going for a realistic graphic style, and they're changing the music. I don't know.
I don't know about that. Like, when I see new, more realistic graphics, I'm kind of like, part of that game's charm was the fact that the graphics looked cartoony. Like, they did not look like they were going for ultra realism with that game. Going for ultra realism kind of seems besides the point, because the game's set up like a B movie, right?
I heard the music's pretty integral to it too, which is usually the case with anything Suda or James Gunn is involved in. So to say that the music's just all different now is like, doesn't sound like a good idea. Like if somebody said, hey, we're gonna remaster Guardians of the Galaxy, but we have to take out all the music.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to bemoan that too much just because that's probably licensing reasons or whatever, which I know, like music licensing, that's difficult. So that might be just out of necessity more than anything else.
Well, the fact that they're removing all of it tells me that they're not concerned with the budget on that area, or they're not going to give the game a budget in that area, which makes me think that they're not going to replace it with something equivalent.
I don't know, but they just don't want to go and relicense the music. That just seems like that's what's going on there. As far as everything else goes, not having Suda or James Gunn involved.
The guy who's involved, he said like he was like an executive producer on it, but I don't think he really had any development history in the game. It was more just like he was one of the money people. And he basically was like, he wrote this whole thing about like bringing it back to the original creators of the game. And I think by that he meant himself, and that he just had a credit.
Yeah, Grasshopper.
And it has nothing to do with Grasshopper, has nothing to do with James Gunn. They're the makers of the game. Suda51 and James Gunn are two of the most auteur people in all of these entertainment industries.
But again, like, that's also at the same token, that's not necessary, because like Demon's Souls on the PS5 is a fantastic remake of the original game, and that had no involvement from Software, or
they didn't announce changes. They didn't announce that they were replacing all of the music and going for a different art style.
No, they were going for as faithful to the original game as possible. They did make some quality of life gameplay tweaks to it, but the
other thing is, like, basically, if I was to say who is the most auteur game maker in the industry, I would say Suda51 without a doubt.
Probably Suda51 or Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, and I would give the edge to 51 over that, you know? And then if I was to say who is the most auteur director currently making movies, I might say James Gunn.
Right.
Like, there's some other ones, Quentin Tarantino, people like that, but like James Gunn is up there.
But my point with that is, like, the game's finished, right? They got a blueprint they can work off of to do a remake.
Maybe.
But, yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like they're remastering. It sounds like they're making a lot of changes to it.
Right.
So I'm kind of worried. And when you have people that are that much of an auteur, you have two of the biggest auteurs, period, or the creators of this game, and like you're stepping away from that. It's kind of like, it's not a good sign. Like, I'm not saying it's not going to be good. I'm just saying it's not a good sign.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It is concerning. Have to keep an eye on it, see how it turns out. I'm disappointed that the original game was never made backwards compatible as part of Xbox's backwards compatible program.
Or ported to anything else.
Or ported to the current generation.
They should have a PC version and a Switch version, and they
should. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you can only play a game on Xbox 360 or PS3.
Yeah, it should be available on everything. I think pretty much everything should be available on everything, unless it's like first party.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Everything it can be available on, it should be available on.
So with this remake coming out, this is going to be the only version of the game accessible on modern consoles.
Yeah.
If it turns out poorly, then that's not good.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see, like when a trailer comes out or when screenshots start surfacing or something. But for now, I'm not too terribly hopeful. But our next piece of news, and this is directly related to the fact that we're going to be doing a lot of Stranger Things talk today. Well, and this timed well with it, obviously, because the second half of season 4 of Stranger Things came out. It was huge as a hit for Netflix. It was massive this season, even more so than regular.
So I saw...
As a result, you got big news coming out related to the Duffer Brothers.
Talking about how huge, real quick. It came out, Stranger Things season 4, like just the second part, just the second part is like the second Netflix series to reach over 1 billion hours viewed.
Yeah.
And that is
after
the first
Game.
First the Squid Game. It still lags behind Squid Game in views, but it is easily the biggest English language Netflix show ever.
Yeah, we talked about this before. The reason why Squid Game is so far ahead of everything else is because it was so popular basically in every country in the world.
Yes.
Whereas like Stranger Things is huge all around the world, but it's more localized to more like Western countries. Whereas like Squid Game was popular everywhere at the same time. And that's like absurd. Like that's not what should be expected as far as how well a series does. Like Squid Game doing that was like nothing had ever done anything like that before,
So, of course, Netflix wants to continue working with the Duffer Brothers. And to that end, they set up production studio, Upside Down Productions.
Upside Down Pictures.
Oh, Pictures, whatever. Close enough. So they're working on a spinoff to Stranger Things. Not surprising. They say it's going to be 1,000% different. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. I guess we'll see.
There were comments about if they were going to be doing like a spinoff related to other characters, and they were saying that they were uninterested in that. And they also said they were uninterested in doing something about a different number. So it's not going to be like it's another number.
What I meant by like that comment was like, I don't know how this is.
Yeah,
what this is going to look like.
Yeah. When you say 1,000% different, that means no idea.
Right, yeah. Although, like they did say previously, one of the cast members, Finn Wolfhard, did correctly guess the premise of the spinoff.
Yeah.
So he's like
just a shot in the dark. It said it, but they said it blew them away that he did.
Yeah,
like they were just not expecting anybody to guess it because it was so different. And then he just did it, and it was like, wow, okay.
He's on the same wavelength, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the stuff he's done besides Stranger Things. He looks like he's kind of into the whole 80s nostalgia himself, even though he's too young for that.
Right, yeah.
It as well, It's
he did it, yeah. Another Stephen King adaptation. Speaking of Stephen King adaptations, Duffer Brothers are going to be adapting Stephen King's book. The book King did with author Peter Straub, The Talisman.
That came out in like 84, I think, something like that.
Yeah, if you look, I believe it was the finale, the last episode of Stranger Things season 4. Lucas is actually reading The Talisman.
Yeah, that is like a little Easter egg they kind of put in.
Yes. yeah, it is. Because like that's going to be the Duffer Brothers' next directing project. They are not going to be directing the spinoff, they said, nor anything else on this. It's The Talisman and then Stranger Things season 5 for the Duffers.
Yeah. And they also said The Talisman is being done in cooperation with Amblin Entertainment. So the whole thing with Stranger Things, it was always like Stephen King and Steven Spielberg. It was the Stevens.
Yes.
That was the inspiration. And then how you have their next project is also with the Stevens. Literally with the Stevens involved. So I thought that was kind of funny. Besides those ones that you mentioned, they're going to be doing a live action series adaptation of Death Note. This had a previous live action movie adaptation on Netflix. So I'm guessing Netflix just still holds the adaptation rights to it. And that's how they got involved with it.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. They did say that this will be a different type of adaptation from what the movie did.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And they're also working on an original Dark Crystal series, which I guess
it's not a Dark Crystal series. It's with the people that made the Dark Crystal.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, yeah, I misread that. Yeah, I'm working on an original series with Dark Crystal creators. Yes. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So who knows what that's going to be then?
It just sounds like it's a lot of, besides Death Note, it's a lot of like 80s nostalgia type projects.
Yes, it is.
And the other thing we missed is they're going to be doing a stage play based on Stranger Things as well. So, but that's not going to be, I mean, unless they drop that on Netflix like sometime in the future.
Merchandising. Stranger Things, the stage play. Stranger Things, the lunchbox.
I think they already have
Stranger Things, the talking doll.
But that's it for our news about the Duffer Brothers. Last time we were talking about Trigun Stampede had been announced.
Yes.
And you were really excited about it. Now that you've seen the trailer, what do you think?
I think it looks great. I know like a lot of people are commenting on Vash's redesign. It's not a super radical redesign. I don't mind it. I think
kind of lost interest when I saw it was a CG series myself.
Yeah, but I mean that's expected these days. Come on, it doesn't look bad for a CG series. To be honest, it does look pretty good.
I'm not into the CG anime thing. I think I don't mind them using CG, but I don't like that look of the CG anime.
As long as the story's good, I'm there. I don't care. It looks good to me.
We also got a trailer for Clerks 3.
Yeah, I saw this. I'm like, because like they're doing the whole meta thing where this is semi-autobiographical to Kevin Smith, right? So this is kind of Kevin Smith going back to his roots because the plot is Randall has like a near-death experience, like he has a heart attack or something, and he decides that he's upset because like he hasn't done anything significant with his life. He's just been a slacker and working that minimum wage jobs. And so he decides like he's going to do something. He's going to make a movie about his life experiences being a clerk and stuff. And it's all biographical to Kevin Smith, not because Kevin Smith, but because
Clerks, the first Clerks was Kevin Smith's autobiographical, you know.
Well, the first Clerks was Kevin Smith saying, "Fuck it, I'm going to make a movie because that's what I want to do with my life." You know, he told the story of like how he sold his comic collection to help fund the making of that film and stuff.
He did all sorts of stuff. There was a flood coming and he pushed his car down a inoperable car down a hill so that it would get flood damage so he could collect insurance.
Oh.
He did the credit card trick, which is something that a lot of filmmakers did during that time when it was really expensive. Like now you can get digital equipment pretty cheap, but back then, in order to make a movie, it just cost a lot. Even to do something really independent and small scale Clerks, it cost a ton of money. So people would do the credit card trick, which is you buy a bunch of stuff on a credit card and then you pay off that credit card with another card. And then you pay off that card with another card. And then you just have this massive amount of credit card debt, but you got your money. So he did the credit card trick. He did a little insurance fraud attempt. I think that didn't actually end up working out or something, if I remember correctly. And then he also sold his comics. He just did everything he could to try to raise money.
To get the money for this. Yeah. So, I mean, that's where it comes with. So it's kind of meta, you know, about that.
Kevin Smith's projects in the last, 20 years have been very pandering to his fan base.
Yeah.
And that seems like what this is. Like in the trailer, it's just constant references to behind the scenes jokes and stories about the making of Clerks. Like the whole thing, like, you're going to have a scene where I get killed or something. That was like the original ending of Clerks that they didn't end up using.
This is basically a movie about the making of Clerks, like using the characters from the film and masquerading as a sequel to Clerks. And of course, it's full of jokes, humor, fan service. It's very modern day Kevin Smith.
Yeah, which isn't as good.
Yeah, that was my takeaway for the trailer. I was like, I don't know.
Was it the Jay and Silent Bob reboot movie? Wasn't that great?
No. I'm not into Kevin Smith anymore. Like
I'm kind of more into Kevin Smith just telling stories or something. You know?
Yeah.
You just want to see him up on stage telling a story.
Kevin Smith on stage or on a podcast, you know, just telling stories.
Yeah, that's kind of better for him right now than as a filmmaker. He's not really. I think the last movie he really put a lot of effort into was like Red State.
Yeah,
and he actually kind of did a few interesting. That is actually a pretty interesting movie. But other than that, like he just seems like it's full just his own like developed meme culture or something. And that's like his whole thing now.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next trailer we had was for Paper Girls, which has a very Stranger Things-esque vibe to it. And it's based on a book. And so it's got this kind of the same kind of like 80s kind of nostalgia type thing. It's these kids from the 80s that get transported somehow to like the modern time. Even like the visual aesthetic has like almost a Stranger Things type look with like where Stranger Things had like the red and blues. This one had like a lot of like purples and stuff in the visuals. So it's just kind of, it's got like a similar vibe.
Thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I watched the trailer and I'm just like, it doesn't look as good as Stranger Things.
This is like Amazon's Stranger Things, but with women.
It's got the problem where the child characters, like their dialogue is overly clever and quippy and stuff. I'm just sick of hearing dialogue written like that. Stop it.
I'll probably watch it just because
normal.
I'll probably watch it because good or bad, it's like in my strike zone of as far as like the kind of stuff I like.
Right.
So I'll watch it, but I don't have like real high hopes for how this is going to turn out.
Yeah.
Next up, we had a trailer for The Magic Flute. This is based off I think an opera, isn't it?
It was very British.
Very Harry Potter-esque.
Harry Potter meets Narnia.
Yeah, Harry Potter meets Narnia. And like it's like instead of witchcraft and wizardry, it's like a school of like music and wizardry.
Yeah. I don't know if the school itself was supposed to be magic or if like the magic is something he discovers as like part of the school. Like it wasn't
magic
clear,
was
like,
the journey.
It wasn't clear from the trailer like if the school was actually teaching magic or was like legit just a music school and he discovers like this magical like part of it like nobody knows about.
The magic flute was inside him all along.
Yes. The magic flute was the friends we made along the way.
Yes.
The trailer also featured the kindest, gentlest man in Westeros.
Yes. The guy who takes care of his dogs. Like no one else.
Like no one else. Yeah. That actor is in this. It looked neat.
I'm a sucker for like Harry Potter type stuff. So like that kind of magic kind of stuff is interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and this kind of went through a number of problems by myself, is that Amazon dropped a like 50-second or something or 60-second trailer or sneak peek kind of thing for the Rings of Power. Unfortunately, they did it in a really weird, stupid way. Like they released at the same time as they released the trailer. They released like a trailer for the trailer, and then they only released the actual trailer on like certain platforms.
Releasing a trailer for something that's like
at the same time.
Yeah, but like the whole concept releasing a trailer of a trailer for something that's less than a minute in the first place is like the dumbest thing ever.
Well, yeah, but it gets even dumber because, like I said, like they released them at the same time, so it's not even like not like they released it a week ahead and said, "Get ready, next week it's coming."
Yeah, it looks nice, but that's the whole thing. It just seemed like, look at how much we spent on this. Look at how
it was just some visual effects shops, basically.
Yeah, look at how nice the visual effects are. Look at how good the costuming is.
I think there were like 2 lines of dialogue in the whole thing.
Everybody looks fantastic. The world looks great. We spent a lot of money. Please look at this. Like it doesn't give you anything in the way of the characters. Like you see them, but very few people speak. Or like any plot of what's happening.
So I think what this says more than anything else is it speaks less about the show than it does about Amazon's incompetence with advertising a show. That's what this really says. And you look at what they've done with The Boys, with all like the weird like videos and tweets and things they've done to promote it and how interesting it is. And then you look at like this and it's like, man, they don't know what the fuck they're doing with this.
This is their big thing. This is what they want everybody to watch.
Which makes it spend on weirder. This, man.
They spent
just the rights. They spent like lots.
Like they spent all the money they spent. Like it's like they're banking on this show where they're going to have to quit the streaming business. This is the way they set this up. And I know that's not true, but yeah, that's the kind of like success they're expecting from this. So like they need to do a better job with the marketing.
Yeah, it's not a great start on that front, but that's it for our news section. Now we're going to move on to On the Horizon. On the Horizon, of course, where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next week or so. We didn't do On the Horizon last week, so we're going to be covering a little bit of a longer period of time here. And that's just like one additional thing on here, which is we didn't get to say last week that Thor Love and Thunder is coming out on Friday, July 8th. I'm not even sure this podcast will be up by then, but we had to mention that somewhere. That Thor: Love and Thunder, it's a big movie.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big movie. It's a Marvel movie. They're all big.
Yeah. Then on Monday, July 11th, Better Call Saul returns for the second half of its final season on AMC. This is going to wrap things up. I'm excited about that. The last episode that's aired so far was really good, so I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going with that. Then we have something I know you're probably really looking forward to, because I am too, and that is What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be good.
Coming on Tuesday, July 12th on FX. Then we have South Park: The Streaming Wars Part 2 coming on Wednesday, July 13th to Paramount Plus. That's what I'm going to re-up Paramount Plus, and then I'll finally be able to watch the Beavis and Butthead movie too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah. And then Resident Evil. You're excited for this, right? Coming on Thursday, July 14th to Netflix.
No. No, I don't care about the show.
But that is it for our On the Horizon segment. That's what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. And that leaves us with our final segment, Full Spoilers. In this week's Full Spoilers, we are going to be discussing Stranger Things 4 Part 2, which is only 2 episodes, but 2 really long episodes.
Yeah.
Season 4,
it's
episode
funny
8.
Because like the last episode is about 2 hours and 30 minutes. And the Duffer Brothers said it's that way because they hate the finale episode being the wind down. They said they hated the trend of like all the action happening in the episode before the finale and then the actual finale episode being all the wind down of the story.
That happens a lot, but it also happens like I remember watching Veronica Mars when it was airing, when it was new. And the season 2 finale, I remember really kind of annoying me, not because of what was in it, but because they tried to fit what was like a 2-hour story into a 1-hour episode.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, like they should have either started getting to this in the penultimate, or they should have had a longer episode, but they crammed all this into one, and it just seemed like it ran by. The pacing was way off. So it's like, I totally understand that kind of like, because there's a lot of stuff that happened after basically the climactic moment of the episode. There was still a lot of shit that went down in this episode after that. And they had to get to that. And it would have sucked if that was basically just a whole episode of just that.
Yeah, it would have sucked. So the Duffer solution was they're just going to do everything in one episode. They're going to do all the action and then the wind down in one episode. And that's why it's a 2.5-hour finale instead of 2 separate episodes. They said they're probably going to do that again for season 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said again, season 5 is going to be feature-length episode as well.
But they said season 5 is likely to be shorter because season 5 is going to jump right into the action.
Well, they already got a lot of the exposition out of the way.
It's going to jump. Yeah, it's going to jump right into the action. Season 5. They said this season they were coming back from season 3 and they had to reintroduce everybody and where they were at with their lives at this point in the story. And the action was going from the crisis of season 3 was solved to like, now we're ramping up the crisis of season 4 and we have to get the kids re-involved. Mm-hmm. And they said, that's not going to be a thing with season 5.
Yeah. We already have all the exposition in place for who the primary antagonist of the entire series is. We know like all that information's already out by the time this season had ended. So they can just get into that. So this was only 2 episodes. We said season 4, episode 8, Papa, and season 4, episode 9, the Piggyback. There's not too much, I think, to say about Papa, that episode, before we get into like the real focus.
Papa was very much an 11 focused episode. Mm-hmm. It was focused mostly on 11 regaining full control over her powers and escaping the facility where Dr. Brenner and Dr. Sam Owens has her at. It solves the military storyline too, with the military coming after her.
Kind of. Like I think that's going to follow into the next season
that might.
As well.
Yeah, it solves it for this season though, at least.
Yes.
Because you don't see the military characters in the finale.
Yeah, I think they're going to come back into play in the final season, but they did kind of set them up as a credible threat, and then that part ended, basically.
It also brings back Mike and Will Argyle and Jonathan into the action, who were absent in the last episode because we just didn't cut back to them for the last episode before this.
Well, the main stuff is related to the facility. And I just want to kind of talk about maybe like Dr. Brenner's story and Sam Owen's story and kind of where it leaves off with both of them. Where in the escape, basically the military faction that wants to kill 11 is, coming down on the facility where they've been at this season. And Brenner is drugged and collared 11. And just as that's happened, then this attack goes down. So he has to try to escape with her. We see basically all of the scientists that he was working with are just dead.
Yes.
His forces that were there to protect are just all massacred. Everything's kind of down to just Dr. Brenner and Sam Owens. Sam Owens is locked up. He basically locks him up because Sam Owens is taking 11's side and saying, we're going to do what 11 wants. And so then Brenner turns on him and basically locks him up.
Yeah.
And that leaves him to be discovered by this other military faction, defenseless. And we don't really get any closure on that yet. That'll be something probably we'll see next season. But Dr. Brenner, as he's escaping with 11, carrying her because he's drugged her, is just basically shot down by a helicopter sniper who is going to kill 11 as well, or trying to.
And then one of the most vivid demonstrations of 11's power is that she is able to use her powers to bring down the sniper helicopter, even though she has the restraining collar on her.
I really dug specifically the helicopter was distracted by Argyle and Mike and everybody showing up.
Yes.
There's a civilian man and they're looking at it. When the sniper scope pans back down to 11, you see her standing facing directly the helicopter with her hand out. And it's like, oh, you're fucked.
Yeah. Oh, you're fucked. You're dead.
I thought that was just a cool little bit.
And from there, Will, Jonathan, Mike, and Argyle reunite with 11.
I also really dug Brenner's death.
Yes.
Brenner had this moment where he was like, I did this all for you. I love you. I'm sorry that things didn't work out for you, but I need you to understand that I did this for you. Tell me that you understand I did this for you. And she doesn't.
Yeah.
I like that. She just says goodbye, Papa. That's it. She doesn't give him what he wants in that moment. She doesn't give him the justification to feel like what he did was okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because he didn't do it for her.
Yeah.
And she knows that's a lie.
I dug that they brought that up and then didn't give him closure on it. That they did both of those things. And that's pretty much the majority of that. I mean, I'm sure we're going to touch on other plot points from that episode, but in my mind, those are all mashed up with the rest of the finale.
Yeah. Everything, it all runs together in my head.
Yeah. When I think about that episode, the only thing I can really remember is the stuff relating to the facility.
And then obviously that episode, we do continue with Nancy from the end of the last episode, where she's being
Vecna overshared.
Yeah, where Vecna overshared. Yeah, where Vecna's in her head and he's terrorizing her and manipulating her, and they're frantically trying to find Nancy's favorite song so that they could do what they did with Max earlier. Unfortunately, they're in Eddie Munson's trailer, and Eddie Munson only has heavy metal music, which Robin is. We need music. And he's like, this is music. One of the most famous scenes from the episode. But they don't get to do that. What actually ends up happening is Vecna decides he's not going to kill Nancy Wheeler. He wants Nancy Wheeler to deliver a message to 11.
Max realizes the truth of the matter, which is that Max is his last target.
Yes.
Even with her having her defenses up, he's not really going after somebody else because there's a particular type of damage, I guess, that he can make a really strong psychic connection with.
Right.
And that's why he needs to go after certain people. He can't,
that's why
it just seems like it's not reliable to go after just anybody. He has to go after specific types of people.
Right. That's why he killed the people he did kill, because they had some sort of trauma that he could use for what he's doing.
Yeah, it seems like there is some kind of a psychic damage thing that he has to exploit to do it right. And Max is kind of his best bet for that. So he hasn't, even though he probably could have just gone after any random person. That's probably what some people are thinking watching it. It seems to imply that that's not the case. That there's more careful thought put into his picking of his target.
So he was never going to kill Nancy. He just wanted to use Nancy.
Yeah, he wanted to send a message using Nancy. And that takes us into the season finale, the extra long season finale. I kind of broke this down in our show notes into parts because I figured we'd start with less interesting stuff and kind of build up. And we'll talk about how it all comes together and later, but we can talk about the setups of what's going on in Russia. So we saw in the last episode of part 1, we saw that Hopper and Joyce reunited, and were escaping from the Russian prison. Well, they have to break back in now. They realize that, there's something going on. They're able to reach out. And like, I thought it was kind of cool the way they did it, like where they had to do this like phone call. They were going to take a helicopter to try to get to America. It wasn't looking like a great plan. Then they decided they needed to try to make contact with, everybody stateside and Dr. Owen's crew to maybe figure out a better way to get back. And they go through this whole rigmarole to make that work that I think actually was effective, which is that they took into account the fact that Russia is this massive surveillance state, and, that they had to like make a vague phone call to a place in Russia to have them contact another contacting party, and then they would call them back, and then the KGB would be directly monitoring the conversation, so they had to be like really careful about what they said. And in doing so, they realized what's happening in Hawkins, all the stuff that they had. This part of the story, these characters had no idea what was going on in Hawkins, right, and with these other characters. And now they do. And they realize that even if they had a better means of getting back, they wouldn't be able to get back in time to actually do anything. So they figure out
exactly
the stuff they saw in the lab when they were escaping. Like there's a link to it. Like they know that the upside down is like this hive mind thing. So
everything's hive mind. Everything's connected. They know this. Hopper knows this. Mm-hmm. So Hopper knows like if he damages the Demogorgons that are there, that's going to damage everything.
And in particular, they see the creature that ends up being called like the Shadow, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
Just because Dustin wasn't there to give it like a Dungeons & Dragons name.
Right.
But they see this creature called the Shadow, and they know that this thing is deeply linked to the hive mind of the Upside Down, and that, this is their target. This is what they want to kill, and they're hoping that in doing so, it can help the kids back in Hawkins. So they go to break back into the prison, and I like that they go back and they're like, oh, the gate's empty. Like, this is going to be easy. And you just see like the prison in the distance, and you just see like gunshot like flickers, and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, they're like fighting the Demogorgons and shit that they left when they escaped. Like, this is not going well in that prison, that prison's fucked, everyone's dead in that prison now. They have to sneak back into it, and they know now that their goal is to, do damage to the hive mind to try to help out. And that's kind of like a running thing with all of the characters' different paths, is that they all have to contribute in different places in different ways.
So the way they did it this season, like they split everybody up like to 3 separate locations. And now that we're in the finale, they got to get everybody involved in like the final battle. But realistically, they can't get everybody back to Hawkins. They kind of wrote themselves into a corner with like everybody being so far away, and there's no realistic way to just teleport them to Hawkins. So
I actually think that's really good though.
Yeah.
Because this is like the opposite of what happened with Game of Thrones in its final couple seasons.
Yes.
Where like Game of Thrones, all of a sudden all the characters learned how to fast travel.
Yeah. They just opened up the map and selected the area and pressed A.
Yeah, and here they kind of like set it up like, as fans watching, you're like, oh, they need to get back really quick so they can do it. And they go like, well, actually, we dangled that carrot in front of you to make you think that, but there really is no way for them to actually get back in time for everything that's going on. But we set up a back door for them to do something.
Yeah, they came up with really clever ways for them to contribute. Like you said, with the Russia storyline, it's the fact that Russia had these Demogorgons and these elements of the Upside Down they took from Hawkins and were running tests on and trying to develop into weapons. Mm-hmm. And the fact that like everything in the Upside Down is linked, and so that they could exploit that link just being in Russia. And then again with like Mike and Eleven and Jonathan and
Will and Argyle, yeah.
Will and Argyle being in the Arizona desert, I believe, and just way too far away to get to Hawkins in time.
Yeah, but they're not going to make it to Indiana in time for that evening's fight.
But 11 can mentally travel there.
And this isn't like just some kind of bullshit they threw in the last moment as like a saving throw. It's just something we've seen before in the show,
Yeah, it's
all the way back in season 1, this stuff was going on.
Yeah, so it's not a Deus Ex Machina. This is 11 using abilities that she's demonstrated before that were clearly established, which I think nice.
It's really cool because they kind of almost made you forget that she did that stuff.
Right.
Like they set everything up to make you think that they were going to get to Hawkins, and then that makes you kind of forget that there is a different way.
This is where the episode's title comes from, the Piggyback.
Yes, it's clever because and it's not even just in her storyline and the way that she contributes, but it also factors into them knowing how 11 had done this before. Like I said, all the way back in season 1 is how they come up with their plan to defeat Vecna in Hawkins as well. Is they're like, well, if Vecna is like 11 and he's doing this psychic attacks on people, then we just have the same exact weaknesses that 11 had that we know she had. We can use those to exploit the situation and attack Vecna. And I like how that all figures in, and how basically, like, watching it, I had basically forgotten that all of that was a possibility.
They just have to bootleg themselves a sensory deprivation tank, right?
Yeah. And it all comes back in. Argyle, they had like a throwaway line, I think, in the last episode in Papa, I think, where Argyle had mentioned, oh, they got, one of my pizza places, like, I forgot what the pizza place is called. They got them out here now, too, apparently. I didn't know that.
Surfer Boy Pizza or something like that.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny because it was such a throwaway line. He just said.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's so concerned about this, and he's like, just like, oh, look, they have that pizza place here, too. And then that actually ended up being relevant. I thought that was really kind of cool the way they did that. And I love the montage of them setting it up in the pizza place. And I love that pizza place had like their own Argyle.
Meanwhile, Nancy and Eddie Munson and Lucas and Max and
Steve
and Erica
and Dustin
and
basically the majority of our characters.
Yeah, basically everybody who's still in Hawkins. They come up with this ambitious plan where they're going to get Vecna. It's a 3-stage plan. So basically what they're going to do is Lucas, Max, and Erica as a lookout are going to use Max as bait for Vecna. Meanwhile, Robin, Steve, and Nancy are going to go into the Upside Down and be the Vecna kill squad, while Dustin and Eddie are going to be distracting the demo bats that surround Vecna and that inhabit the Upside Down and make things difficult.
Resulting in one of the coolest scenes in the entire series.
Oh, yeah. The idea is when Vecna is possessing somebody or invading their mind and terrorizing them, his body is just sitting there in the Upside Down, unguarded.
And the only guards he has are those demo bats who would be distracted.
Yes.
And that would allow Steve and Nancy and Robin to murderize him.
Yeah, to murderize him. It's a solid plan. And yes, we get the most epic scene in the episode with Eddie gets on top of his trailer in the Upside Down with the Upside Down version of his guitar shredding Master of Puppets, the all-time greatest Metallica track.
Which came out the same year, by the way.
Yeah, it came out
in 1986.
So that would have been like brand new music, Eddie. And I'm glad they chose like the best track for Metallica too, like because that made it extra better. It's just like an awesome like visual because he's up there shredding, and you got like the lightning from the Upside Down. You got the demo bats. It looks like the cover of a heavy metal album.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Not just the best Metallica song and like the coolest one to put in a scene like that, but I mean it's literally. Master of Puppets is about drugs and like a drug dealer basically, but like it's the same. It can be applied to like Vecna being like a master of puppet,
Right? Yeah, it applies thematically to the show too. Yeah, it could apply as a reference to what Vecna's doing.
And we just have to say, like, once again, that the use of music in such an instrumental part of plot points in the season has been phenomenal. I mean, we had Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and that's like people that don't even know about Stranger Things have probably heard about the success story about that song from the 80s suddenly becoming huge again.
Zoomers now know about Kate Bush.
Yeah. We already know, like, man, they did a great job with music. And then here we go again, man. Phenomenal scene. It's really cool. I was watching some stuff talking about kind of how they pulled off the scene and everything else. There's actually like basically 3 guitarists involved in that scene.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they didn't just use the Metallica track. They had an original recording of the guitar part being played.
So they actually played it.
Yeah. And guess who played it?
Lars Ulrich?
No. Their new bass player, or they're not really new. He's been with them for a while. His son played the guitars for this part.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
In performance, but like, recorded the music for it.
Right, yeah.
So that because they didn't just want to sound like, James Hetfield's playing or something, they needed it to sound like somebody else playing that song. So they did that.
Right.
Then they had some guy who's, like the School of Rock, like that movie, and how it's like based on an actual like music school. And they put out like YouTube videos of these kids covering like metal songs and stuff. Well, like one of the guys from that is like Eddie's body double to play the really guitar parts, specifically the solo parts, because the actor who plays Eddie himself is also a guitar player.
Nice.
And he learned Master of Puppets like down. He frantically studied it and learned it. And so
really
the riffing stuff you see being played, that's like him mimicking that stuff himself.
Oh, that's
but he couldn't
really
do
awesome.
The solo. Like he struggled on the solo and didn't feel comfortable doing it. So they brought in this other guy to do the finger mimicking on the solo as a body double. And then they had, like I said, the bass player from Metallica's son actually playing all that music, you know? So it's like, it's kind of cool the way they brought all that together, you know, that they put so much care into making that work. Because usually, as a guitar player, when I see, you know, a big music scene in a movie or something, it's just horrible. It's like somebody, you know, has no idea what a guitar is, like pretending to play guitar. And then like the actual music track is like just the straight actual guitar track from the song. So it doesn't even sound like somebody else playing it.
Yeah. I would say that scene was so perfectly done, and it's going to go down as one of the most memorable sequences in the entire series.
Oh yeah. Just an amazing scene. One of the best metal scenes, period, in any movie or show or anything like ever. Just, so cool.
And unfortunately for the entire crew, things start going south pretty badly. Max does manage to get Vecna to take the bait and to terrorize her in her mind. Unfortunately, when that happens, the basketball player there, the star basketball player whose girlfriend was killed.
Jason.
He shows up and he finds Lucas there. And his immediate reaction is Lucas is part of this Hellfire Club cult, which had now, in his mind and in the mythology of the town, become a satanic cult.
Jason fucks up so much on that side.
Yes, he does. He pulls a gun on Lucas, you know. He demands Lucas wake Max up from her trance.
Lucas tries to explain what's going on, but he's just not listening.
Meanwhile, Erica's being restrained by Jason's buddy.
Yeah, one of the other basketball players. So that goes south. Nancy, Robin, and Steve inside Vecna's house in the Upside Down. I think Robin steps on one of the tentacles or something.
She does. I think so.
I think it's her. And I think she steps on one of the tentacles on the ground.
Vecna manages the sense. Like,
it wasn't Vecna, it was the hive mind or whatever. That she stepped on one of the tentacles on the ground. Like they had those mossy tentacles or whatever.
Well, what happened was Vecna senses them coming, even though he's supposedly busy. Like, and we know Vecna is the one who sensed them coming for him because he says as much to Max afterwards. Like, the tentacles grab all of them, pin them to the wall, and start choking everybody out. And yeah, like when Vecna's terrorizing Max, Vecna said like he saw them coming for him, like he sees everything. He basically says there's nothing that you can hide from him because like he says like I see all. It's like, okay.
I think he's overstating his power in that scene because I think what's very clear is that all of that happened after Robin stepped on the thing. So I think enough of his attention was distracted by that happening for him to pick up on that. So I think he has the capability of seeing everything, but still being a human, basically, he has to manage what he can actually partition and think about at one time, you know?
Right, yeah, exactly.
So I'm still blaming Robin, is what I'm saying. You're still
blaming Robin. She still stepped on the tentacle. Yeah, and obviously, like, Max is trapped with Vecna with no backup. And then, finally, Eddie and Dustin get overwhelmed by the demo bats and have to flee. And everything's just looking dire as heck for our heroes in the Upside Down. Not even at the Upside Down, also in Russia, because we also flash to Jim almost being overwhelmed by a Demogorgon.
Yeah, one of the demo dogs is got him pinned down, and he's basically like holding the thing's mouth shut and away from him, like just barely. Yeah, just keeping him off of him. And it's one of those. It's like that scene in the Avengers where it shows all of the teams losing before they come back together.
Right. It's one of those scenes where it's darkest before the dawn. Right. It looks like everybody's gonna lose, and it's just.
And the turning point is Joyce.
Yep, the turning point is Joyce because, like, she manages to get in there with the taser just in time, and that sends a shock to the entire system. And then Elevens manages to get in there with Max and start taking the fight to Vecna, you know. But even then, like, 11 gets overpowered.
Yeah.
and it looks like she's in a tough spot too.
Yeah, he's got her pinned up against the door in his kind of inner mind palace version of his house where it's all broken into pieces. He's got her like pressed up against the door and he's telling her that he's going to kill her, but before that, he wants her to watch.
Yeah, he wants her to watch him kill Max and complete his grand goal because like the goal was like there were 4 chimes, right? So what that meant was he needed 4 kills. He wasn't merely opening portals. The portals are supposed to like be fissures or fractures. And what happens after he kills 4 people is that the fractures connect and everything breaks and it creates like a permanent rift that things from the upside down can get through.
Yeah, giant like, hellmouth to the upside down.
Yeah, exactly. And so he wants 11 to watch him kill Max and complete his goal.
Mm-hmm.
He wants 11 to watch him win before he kills her, basically.
So we get to the fight is still going on in all these different places. 11's losing in this part, but you have the momentary distraction caused by Hopper and the people in Russia taking out the Demogorgons.
Yeah, they killed the
that have
Demogorgons.
absorbed the shadow, by the way. We didn't mention that. That shadow that was like this, looked almost like a nano machine version of the Upside Down or something.
Right.
Like went into the Demodogs and the Demogorgon and was to directly control them. So they weren't just acting like, thoughtless animals. And they ended up, Joyce used a cattle prod to free Hopper. They were able to complete their plan. Murray torched them. The one main Demogorgon survived, but in epic fashion, Jim Hopper finds like Conan's sword.
Oh yeah, this is great. Hopper finds a sword and he immediately becomes a Dark Souls protagonist where he just starts like chopping limbs off and stuff and he ends up by beheading.
It's weird that he just kept rolling around all the time.
Yeah, he kept just rolling. But
yeah, he cut off his arm and then he cut off the head. I was like screaming when I was watching. I'm like, decapitate!
That scene was awesome.
Yeah.
And then Dustin and Eddie manage to get away from the demo bats. Dustin manages to get back into our world through Eddie's trailer, but Eddie decides he doesn't want to run. He wants to be a hero, and he goes back to confront the bats in an attempt to buy Dustin more time to escape.
Yeah, to buy everybody more time.
To buy everybody more time. Yeah, to buy everybody more time. Dustin goes back for Eddie, but Dustin injures his leg, jumping back through the portal to the Upside Down because, they moved the mattress, to try and keep the demo bats out of the trailer, so it's no longer there. So he just hits the rope's gone because... Yeah, rope's gone because Eddie cut it. Yeah, so Dustin just jumps and he falls and hits the floor and injures his leg. He doesn't break it because he can still hop on it.
Yeah, he got an owie.
He got an owie. He goes back for Eddie, but unfortunately, in one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the entire season, it's too late. Eddie has given his life to the demo bats to buy everybody time and to be the hero that he didn't think he was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really touching scene, between Eddie and Dustin as Eddie's dying.
Yeah, it's sad. They Oberyn'd him. And by that, I mean, they introduced a character who quickly became one of, if not my favorite character in the whole serise in a very short period of time. And then killed him by the end of the season. I would have loved to see Eddie be a part of season 5, but damn it, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Unfortunately, because of what Joyce and Jim and Murray were able to do in Russia, the strike team of Robin, Nancy, and Steve were freed.
Basically able to break free. Meanwhile, back in Max's mind, 11's being restrained, and Vecna starts to kill Max by lifting her up in the air.
Yeah.
We see, we go back to Lucas and Jason, and we see what's happening to Max.
Yeah, she's being broken. Literally, she's
being broken. This sight freaks Jason out and distracts him enough for Lucas to get the upper hand on him. And I think he kicks him out the window or something. He basically kills him.
No, he doesn't.
What happened?
So he knocked him out. And this happened before Max was being lifted up.
It happened at some point.
Lucas basically ducks and tackles him. They get into a fight. As part of the fight, Jason steps on the tape player, breaking it. That was the way to get her out of it, which ends Lucas's chance of basically saving her that way. But Lucas, basically is able to beat down Jason. He's basically desperate enough that he just gets the upper hand and beats him up and knocks him unconscious on the floor of the attic of that house. So by the time he gets him down and stuff, he turns around. That's when Max starts levitating and her arms start breaking and stuff. The tape player's broken, so he can't do anything for her. So he's just like there, like screaming and shouting.
Yeah, so yeah, she's being broken. It's very horrific, but 11 manages to break free.
Because of Mike.
Mike gives her like a motivational speech, right?
It's cool because they made a big plot point about him not saying that he loved her. And then he talked to Will about the reason he wasn't able to say that is because he feels he just happened upon her, like that she's like this superhero, this important person, and he just happened to be like the guy who Superman landed on the doorstep of, you know?
Yeah.
And so he feels like insecure, so that's why he hasn't said like I love you to her.
He's motivated by Will.
Is because he's afraid that's going to hurt even more if he kind of lets that out.
Mike gives 11 a pep talk, and she's able to break free of Vecna's grip, and she's able to fight back.
That coincides also with Nancy and Steve and Robin torching Vecna. That's like that distracts
torching
Vecna.
Nancy gets the final blows in. She gets those shotgun shots in, and she like blows Vecna out the window.
I'd say probably unfortunately, because if Steve had come up and like cut off his head with that giant axe he had, then maybe we wouldn't have a season 5.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, she blows Vecna out the window, but in a nod to Halloween, you know, Vecna falls out the window, but then when they go down there, he's gone, right?
Yeah.
Just like Michael Myers falling out the window. He's not going to be on the ground when they check.
It's all because they pulled a Thor in Infinity War. They didn't go for the head.
Yeah, they did go for the head. So Vecna's still out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And Max gets dropped.
Unfortunately, Max gets dropped.
She's still alive, but she's like barely.
She's still alive, but she's like her bones are broken, and you know, like
she's got eyes are hemorrhaging in her head and stuff.
Her eyes are destroyed. She can't see. Yeah, she's hemorrhaging,
and she's telling Lucas like, "I don't want to die. I can't see anything. I can't feel anything."
And she does die. She dies for like a brief moment, but then 11 like touches her, and I think she restarts her heart.
Mm-hmm.
But that moment of death is enough for
the 4 chimes.
Yet the 4 chimes for Vecna's plan to complete, and the fissure opens in Hawkins, which everybody just attributes it to an earthquake, but the kids and everybody, like, they know better.
Yeah.
And then you get...
Basically, everybody in town either equates it to an earthquake or Eddie Munson doing dark magic or something.
Yeah, or something like that, yeah. Especially since they never find Eddie Munson's body because, like, it's in the upside down.
Yeah.
And so, like, he's missing officially. And then we get to the wind down, the epilogue, right? Everybody makes it back to Hawkins and reunites. They have some nice reunion moments with that.
Best is probably 11 and Hopper.
We get to see, like, they have, like, this rescue shelter thing set up for people, like, affected by the earthquake, looking for survivors and stuff. They're setting up, like, donations, like food and clothing and stuff for people. And Dustin and Robin and stuff are working there, trying to help out. Robin finds out the girl from band who she has a crush on is also helping out there, and they get some quality time with Steve Harrington looking on and nodding in approval. Mm-hmm. We get this great scene with Dustin and Eddie's uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie's uncle is upset that everybody thinks Eddie's behind this and everything, and Dustin tells him...
Did you know, by the way, that Eddie was based on one of the West Memphis 3?
No, I didn't know that.
So you know about the West Memphis 3, right?
Yeah, I know about that.
So he's based on one of the West Memphis 3. So I think that added to the kind of like emotion of this scene of like the idea of somebody being innocent but being hated by an entire town because he's different. And then they basically, because of the satanic panic, put everything on him that is unreasonable. And and that's kind of the conversation that Dustin has with his uncle. He reveals that Eddie died. He tells him that Eddie died a hero. And he says that he wishes that the people in town got to know Eddie because they would have loved him.
Gaten Matarazzo is so fantastic in the scene too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this scene is like, that's some of his best acting in the entire series.
Yeah. It also they just did such a good job in general with Eddie. Not just the actor playing him, but with setting up kind of the story around him, the way they set up his relationship with his uncle. And they didn't even have that much to explain his relationship with his uncle, but you can feel it, you know?
This is how you write characters and you get people attached to characters, even though like they haven't been around for that long time, and without needing to have like all this exposition or explanation of who they are, you know. Eddie Munson is like one of those characters, the way he's written, the way the actor portrays him, that's just naturally charismatic and that you come to love.
And it's even just also in the way they portrayed the uncle and like his brief interactions with Nancy earlier in the season and other things like that, and the way they established the kind of person he is. And then the little off references to the fact that Eddie's father was kind of out of the picture, and so that's why his uncle was taking care of him. And it gives you a real idea of who he is as a person. Like all these pieces come together and you really get a good view of it. So when Dustin is talking to Eddie's uncle and you can see how much pain Eddie's uncle's in, it's believable, even though I don't think there's a single scene in the entire show of those two characters together.
No.
So even though there isn't, you still feel that connection because the pieces were so well put together.
But anyway, with everybody reunited, now it's time to confront the next problem, which is the fact that there's escaping, like you said earlier, Hellmouth in Hawkins, and things are
dying. The ash is falling.
The ash is falling. Things are dying. Things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. And it's just everybody stealing themselves for the final battle. That's where it ends.
I also loved right before that, they had the reunion of Elle and Hopper was great.
Yeah.
Because you can see like Elle's just in so much pain about what's going on with Max. And we had the scene where she was in the hospital.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And she had, Max lived. She basically like somehow saved her.
Max is alive.
But she's like a vegetable.
Yeah, she's a vegetable. She's in a coma. And 11 goes into her mind and she's not there.
Yeah, it's just black. It's empty. And
so we don't know like what's really going on. Like if she's in a coma or if like there's something more happening there. Like if she's just mentally been erased.
If they're going to be able to get her back, or if maybe like her body's going to be inhabited by something. I don't know. There's like lots of things that could end up happening in the final season with her. But 11 after that is so like distraught, just kind of sitting in her room, just upset. And the door opens and there's Hopper. And you just see it all on her face. Like, it's like she starts crying, but smiling. And it's kind of like that flickering between grief and just like this huge relief that, this person that she thought was dead is here for her. And so that was a really good reunion. And I even like they had like the scene where after the two of them went outside, like Mike walked up to Hopper and they had this kind of a little bit of animosity between them in like season 3 where like Hopper's like, oh, this damn kid, or whatever. And he says to Mike like, oh, you've grown. And Mike's like, you've shrunk.
Yeah.
Because Hopper like lost so much weight,
It's a great scene. We saw Hopper and Joyce finally get together.
Yeah.
We don't see Murray or Yuri or Dimitri in the last. It's assumed after they dropped Hopper and Joyce off in America,
they went on an adventure.
They went on their own adventure. Yeah.
They went for pirate gold in the Caribbean Sea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
But
that's Stranger Things season 4.
Oh, the one thing you were talking about, you thought that Lucas had killed Jason. Jason did die.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because of Lucas. And I didn't even notice this when I watched it. Like somebody told me, and then I noticed it when I saw clips again. I'm like, oh yeah, it did happen. When he was unconscious on the ground, and when the rift opened, when Max died, it literally like went through him and tore him in half.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I completely spaced on that part, but that's fine.
Yeah, the important point is that asshole's fucking dead.
Yeah, exactly.
I was struggling before to like place it, whether I thought season 1 or 4 was better. 1 has the whole thing about kind of the purity of a single season story, Yeah. But like having finished it, I think Stranger Things 4 is better. It's gone beyond that threshold.
I think though, it's not my favorite TV. It's definitely going to be on my best of.
It's a huge step up from season 3 too.
The whole thing,
which was already good.
The whole thing was back then. Like I love the fact that, as a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, I love all the Nightmare on Elm Street references and influence this season.
Yeah, I mean, they gave the Upside Down from the entire show. They gave the Upside Down a personality and a motive.
Yeah, a personality and motive. Yeah, it's not just like a mindless thing, right? It's not like the Mind Flayer is just this mindless creature. Now there is a creature. There's somebody writing the show who has real intelligence, real motives, and everything is directed.
That's another thing they did that I liked, is that they pointed out that they showed the other part of the origin story once Vecna, or Henry Creel, as he was at the time, was in the Upside Down and was exploring it. And he came across stuff like Upside Down wasn't quite what it was. Like he kind of took in a bit of the Upside Down, and the Upside Down kind of took in a bit of him. Yeah. Because you see like a Demogorgon in the background when he's walking, but it's not attacking him or anything. You see the Upside Down, and it's kind of like freaky looking. It's very alien looking, but it doesn't look as evil and twisted.
We find out he used his powers to kind of bend the upside down and twist it to his will so that everything works for him.
So like the mind flare that we like, they even Dustin alluded to like saying that the Demogorgon is the foot soldier and Vecna is the guard and the mind flare is the like king or the general or whatever, or not the general, but that's what he said.
Yeah.
Vecna was, but like he's like the leader or whatever. Find out, well, actually the mind flare is Vecna. Like the personality of the mind flare is Vecna.
Yes. So what ended up possessing Will in season 2 was Vecna.
Yes.
And another thing, like in the finale, is like when Will returns to Hawkins, he starts feeling Vecna's influence again.
Yeah, Mike says like, well, hopefully Vecna's like dead and gone, and Will's like, he isn't.
Yeah.
He's like, as soon as we came back to town, I could feel him. He's hurt, but he's not out, and we have to kill him because he will not stop.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just such a good ending. Like the way they're going to bring into this next season, just like running from the very beginning. I'm excited about, but I'm also kind of like, oh, what's, it's going to be shorter. Like how much content is there actually going to be? Like it's all about if they can stick the landing now.
Yeah.
And they did such a great job with season 4 that I don't have doubts, but we have to see that happen because it's a hard thing to do. A lot of shows have failed.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but I'm hopeful.
Okay. And that's Stranger Things season 4.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening. Next week, we're going to be talking about the penultimate and final episodes of both Ms. Marvel season 1 and The Boys season 3. We're going to be covering 4 episodes total there, and the closure of both of those seasons. That's what we're going to be covering next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will's at Voxel Hero. Send us a comment. That's the best way to reach us is on Twitter. Check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. Go to any of our container stories for the podcast. You can find links to all of our different social things, to our SoundCloud page, anything that you want access to for us, you'd be able to find there. So check that out. Until next week, thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.